Hi, this is Bud Case. Dan Holfer and I, the co-host of A Work in Progress, welcome to you to this first episode. This podcast aims at conversations that move us towards being fully human. Looking at wholeness, we explore and explore what someone created in the image of God looks like, good, the bad, the ugly. My friend Dan Hofer and I will be blending our experiences in the fields of education, counseling, and recovery to facilitate that conversation. The first part of today's conversation will be about appearance management. So Dan, when did you were first introduced to that term?
Well, I first heard the term appearance management from Jeff Van Vonderen, who's best known for his appearances on intervention TV shows on the A&E network. I saw him at a recovery conference in the early 90s. He applied it to the very common part of our human experience of subtly, or not so subtly, presenting ourselves in the best possible light when there's nothing authentic about our disclosures. We simply want to look good, or maybe not look bad. Well, several years ago, I was having a conversation with a young mother. In addition to therapy, she'd begun attending recovery meetings. A mother of young children, one with special needs and a history of abuse, she grew up in a fundamentalist Pentecostal family. Frequent mantra in that type of family was, quote, "Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect." Well, she was trying. Early on in one of the AA meetings she attended, someone stated, "Jesus would rather have my real shit than my plastic flowers." Her taking that to heart so she could be honest about what she was really experiencing was one of the most liberating experiences she had ever had. Life doesn't have to be about looking good. It becomes a work in progress rather than a performance. And that's the foundation for this podcast. The term perfect and the quote from Matthew's biblical narrative means moving towards wholeness and well-being. It fosters a process of becoming more and more real about who we were created to be. And that becomes a risky adventure of finding community where we can disclose our good, bad, and ugly in safe ways. Now, family expectations can fight against that stance. How we're supposed to conform to the family appearance management rules is powerful. We'll be doing several sessions regarding commonly recognized rules of dysfunctional families in upcoming podcasts. The rules include not talking about incongruity in the family, not having unpleasant feelings, not questioning authority, and as a result, not trusting. Since we learn most of these often unspoken rules and expectations early in our development, they're deeply entrenched in most of us by school age. We're often not even aware of what is having impact on us. But you and I have gone through efforts to measure up to our cultural, subcultural, and family expectations. What are some of the messages you received growing up that encourage you to present your plastic flowers?
It took a while in recovery meetings and therapy to realize that what I had been giving God, plastic flowers, because it all looked so holy. In my home, I was expected in church every time the doors opened. That meant Sunday morning and evening, Wednesday evening prayer meeting, Friday evening youth rally, and then there were the revivals every night, all week, 2 to 3 weeks. As Pentecostals, that meant going past midnight. Once in Cuba, at the age of 10, Dad preached every night for 13 weeks solid. Then there were the jobs, singing in the choir, teaching Sunday school, witnessing or evangelizing door to door, tithing and giving till it hurts, to mention a few. Other jobs were less obvious: everyday Bible reading and prayer, memorizing scripture, um, praying before meals, for example. We always had to do our duty and do the right thing as defined by someone else that it was assumed God told. We had to say the right things, never lie, always tell the truth, never swear in court or ever. We were to affirm, heaven forbid, if we listened to or laughed at any off-color jokes, to say nothing about telling them. Then there was the list of don'ts. Don't smoke, don't drink alcohol, don't dance or even attend, don't go to football games, and especially don't go to a church other than one's denomination. I couldn't even be angry, nor for that matter, be too happy either. I should never say no when asked to volunteer at church, and never question church leaders, pastors, overseers. We had to ignore our feelings, all feelings. I did, and did I say we had to look the right way? Only church clothes go to church. We don't wear shorts. Our girls wore dresses until the 80s when pants were allowed for them. These things made me stand out in school as an object of ridicule and criticism. It felt like I had a target on my back, but I was told that that made me a witness for Jesus. It was a holiness badge or something.
Yeah, my family's rules were more implicit than yours, but followed pretty closely. They were packed with shame. I brought notes from home each elementary year indicating I wasn't supposed to participate in square dancing and PE. Apparently, movie theaters and bowling alleys were dens of iniquity. I had my mouth washed out on several occasions for saying such offensive things as shoot or shut up. No euphemisms allowed in our house. Soap and pepper were applied orally a time or two to remind me of that rule. Somehow, the appearance management plastic flowers were also supposed to smell good. To love deeply, exercise justice more thoroughly, give more generously to others, to display compassion to the compulsive, were concepts I don't remember having been encouraged in or even had explained. It's sad to identify that so many compulsive and addictive behaviors, socially acceptable like work addiction or unacceptable like drugs and alcohol or porn addiction, get their start in people hiding behind those plastic flowers. I guess a lot of religious folks don't believe the truth will set you free. So many people remain in hiding with their struggles until it's way past a struggle. Let's look just briefly at some statistics. The Center for Disease Control identified in 2023 the greatest number of people that die in 1 year from suicide ever, 50,000 people. From the Rape, Abuse, Incest Network, 60,000 plus children have been molested annually since 2016. Over 433,000 plus Americans, 12 or older, were sexually assaulted or raped in the past year. The National Institute of Health reports close to 30% of 18 to 25-year-olds binge drank in the last month. Close to 24% of 18 to 25-year-olds have had an illicit drug use disorder. Pornhub website reported 100 million daily visits in 2023. These statistics indicate there's a whole lot of pain present in our lives. I'm just realizing as I'm saying that stuff, it's hitting, that hurts. Healing from these issues comes in the process of telling the truth. On our podcast, we will break a few family and systems rules, those which discourage looking at our unhealthy choices in our effort to explore what telling the truth looks like. We'll also encourage application of Dr. John Gottman's research at the University of Washington over the last several decades regarding expressing 5 affirming statements to every one negative or critical one in our relationships. Sadly, there's a minority of people who experience that ratio. We want to segue here to identify what it takes to refocus on healthy thinking and behaving. So the practical application of Dr. John Gottman principles is something we can do regularly and without complication. Self-disclosure, telling stories, and affirmations foster our psychological well-being. Expressing our appreciation for efforts made by family and others, kindness shown, and or the impact of another's sharing with us discloses how we're benefiting from these acts. These expressions are often a part of that 5-to-1 ratio of positive qualities versus negative or critical ones that Gottman referred to. And those are so helpful to ourselves and others. It frequently sets the tone for the depth of conversation. Bud and I have been part of a men's group since the early 2000s. That's AD. All of us in the group know each other's good, bad, and ugly. The self-disclosure, though often initially shame-producing because of past experiencing, paradoxically has reduced our carried shame. Now, that concept was first described to me by Pia Mellody at a conference I attended. We say something innocently as a child that a parent reacts to harshly because it's embarrassing to them. That reaction is typically shame motivated. Parents and family, usually unintentionally, often hand each other their shame feelings that they're not even aware of. Sexuality is one example of this. The struggle to explain the emotional and physical connection of sexual union with children is a common challenge for parents. The fact that it's deeply personal is one element in that discomfort. The other is that frequently so much shame has become a part of that mix. The self-disclosure of this shame is in a safe place frees us emotionally. Ideally, our engaging in personal therapy is to give us practice in the context of unconditional positive regard, empathy, and congruence. Thanks, Carl Rogers. It's especially gratifying to have those three elements experienced in our day-to-day sharing with friends in community. One of my favorite Gottman exercises is a 20-question game. Pleasant and unpleasant experiences from counselees' lives become a way for people to share elements of their story. Questions like, I can tell you in detail my first impressions of my partner, or I can tell you some of my partner's life dreams. Those reveal beautiful stories. The internal narrative, when shared out loud, often helps us clarify critical self-talk we've not been hearing. While preparing this podcast, I was reminded of being at a family reunion with all my cousins from the Anderson side of the family. We were sitting across the street from my grandparents' home at a park. Our grandfather had been employed by the city of Tacoma and was instrumental in the development of that park. All of the cousins had spent joyful times playing there as we grew up. As we were reminiscing, my oldest brother, Daryl, made a statement. We don't know why Dan doesn't talk much. To that point, I chalked that trait up to being introspective. My oldest cousin immediately quipped, you guys, my older brothers and my dad, always told Danny to be quiet. My life flashed in front of my eyes as I viscerally felt that. I actually had been a bit of a chatterbox in elementary school with classmates I'd been with since kindergarten. My fourth grade teacher got mad at me one day, lifted me off the floor, and with intensity told me, with my feet dangling in the air, I told you to be quiet. That paralleled my hearing the same message at home. After returning from the family reunion, I was sitting in a staff meeting, and it dawned on me that I didn't initiate offering information or perspective in staff meetings, as I would wait until I was specifically asked for my take on issues. That narrative had stuck. My son has a family ritual at dinner time asking, what was the best part of your day? The hardest part of your day? And what is something that made you laugh? The storytelling fosters emotional connection. My dad's telling stories of his riding the range as a teenager kept me sitting fairly quietly while he cut my hair as a young boy. And years ago, when our resident life directors at the University of Laverne took a new student team out in the wilderness to build connections for the coming year, I invited them to share the significant events in their lives that had shaped them as a person. One student's description of his parents' struggle to conceive was profound in underscoring how special he felt even to be alive. Those stories were felt as holy moments and helped meld them into a supportive group. The vulnerable stories expressed in the community group my wife and I are a part of feel the same way. But share with about your experience on the substance abuse leadership team retreat when we did the strength bombardment exercise.
Dan, that was one of the most impactful exercises I've ever participated in. We had spent Friday night and all day Saturday together working on both the First Step program, but also on our own issues, learning from each other. You led us in group activities to help us grow together as a team. We each got to share our strengths and learn to trust others on the team as we develop solutions. So on Sunday morning, as we were wrapping up, you asked us to take small scraps of paper and write the names of all the participants and write something that you liked about them or a strength you had seen during the training. Then, as they sat in the middle of the circle, we would in turn stand in front of them, read what we had written about them face to face, and then we would hand the person the slip of paper with what we had just affirmed in them. I remember long after that workshop, I carried those affirmations with me, and at least once a day, pulled them out and read them out loud to myself. Those papers became worn with use, but the glow never faded.
Yeah, I've never forgotten asking one of the participants at a codependency retreat what the highlight was for her. She said hearing people express appreciation and value to her during that same exercise. Interestingly, I take about 3 minutes total to have people share other participants' strengths. The recipients usually are overwhelmed. In her case, she identified she couldn't remember anything specifically anyone said to her. It just felt great. And after talking with a number of participants about their similar experience of not remembering the positive thoughts shared about them, I came to believe shame again was playing a role.
So, Dan, how do we use the positive power of affirmation to counter shame? Is there a way we can make affirmations stick around?
Well, by repeating healthy affirmations, we're fundamentally wiring our brain physiologically by putting new neural pathways into place. Dr. Daniel Siegel, in his work at UCLA, has done important research in interpersonal neurobiology on the domains of the brain. And it's fascinating to also hear Dr. Kurt Thompson, on his Being Known podcast, discuss the importance of understanding the application of those domains and how those neural connections convey information. With that foundation in mind, affirmations are a cognitive practice of deliberately replacing harmful negative self-talk, some which is barely conscious, with more accurate statements. Statements made to us critically by caregivers in our early lives can easily become a framework we operate out of for years. When we learn to express valuing and affirming statements to ourselves and others, fundamental physiological and emotional change occurs. This is not a Saturday Night Live sketch telling ourselves we're wonderful. It is acknowledging our adequacy and competence in areas of our life that are important to us. That fosters better self-care, more emotional resilience, and our being a bit more fun to be around. Bud, You've used it in your personal life, educational world, and recovery settings. What have you observed when affirmations are applied?
Back in the 1980s in my job, right about the time I got into recovery, I received training and then trained as a trainer in a program by Lou and Diane Tice called Investment in Excellence of the Pacific Institute. The affirmation process was one of a dozen or so tools designed to help one improve both on and off the job. The more I applied the process to my work life, I realized how powerful it could be in my personal, private, and family life. It even helped me understand the meaning of faith from a spiritual standpoint. It has helped me put faith into action.
So, Bud, can you give us some examples of affirmations that changed you so dramatically?
Well, to put it simply, I was seriously in trouble in so many areas of my life. I had no idea where to start to get better. I felt as though I needed major emotional surgery, like maybe a month away from all my responsibilities with intensive therapy. But I knew I could never afford to drop out of my life for a month to get my head straight. At least that is what I believed at the time. So I was determined to create as many features as possible of emotional surgery in place. I attended several 12-step meetings a week, therapy with two therapists. One of them was a 2-hour session each week. I read dozens of self-help books and magazines, attended several weekend recovery conferences, and even published a 12-step recovery newsletter. But the single most important tool was the affirmation process. For example, I wrote out about 30 affirmations to change aspects of my stinking thinking and began reading them out loud to myself several times a day. When I began to see the positive impact they were having in my life, I recorded them on a small recorder and then listened to them as I drove to and from work, when I was alone during the day, and then in bed just before going to sleep. Um, as an example, success with my own self-talk. Here are a couple. Number one, I speak to myself with regard, just like a good friend does. And number two, my coworkers listen to my ideas because they are creative and progressive. Then I had some success with a coworker. I began speaking to him with affirmations. I began holding him to a higher standard than I had in the past, and I talked with him at length and told him how his ideas were worth being taken seriously with our co-project directors. It was amazing the difference that it made in his life when I began doing that. Then I had success with affirmations with regard to my children. I began repeating things like, I respect Jason and demonstrate that I listen to him without judgment, or I accept Jason with unconditional love and personal regard. I was quickly amazed how it seemed that my family members were nicer to live with and cooperative. What really was happening was I was changing into a healthier person. My attitudes began to shift from trying to make them change to focus on what I did to evoke resistance. It changed my expectations from perfectionism to reality. I began to see and deal with my anger and rage. I let them know that when I behaved out of anger, I did not like myself, and removed myself from the situation immediately. to deal with the situation at a later time. As I looked at what I truly have control of, me and my behavior, over time, I became a better version of what God had intended for me.
Well,
And
thanks for
it,
sharing that.
I'm sorry.
I had skipped over to the last part of the um, session one. We'll be looking this first season at podcasts at such topics as the 5 deepening levels of human connection, what human pair bonding looks like, and its importance to truly intimate relationships, the necessity of experiencing what it is like to feel safe, valued, and accepted as a foundation for our growth. We'll do an interview with Pastor Scott Bossler from Visalia and his deep personal experience of grief and loss. Being a work in progress keeps us benefiting from ups and downs of life's experiences. Bud and I operate from a comment that the first century preacher named Paul made: "He who has begun a good work in you will bring it to completion." We're anticipating the exploration of these topics will encourage and enhance your personal growth. We hope you'll find ways to deepen your relationships, inviting friends and family into conversations about the podcast. Please feel free to email questions or comments to danandbud.12@gmail.com. Special thanks to Brian Edward Duncan for his song, We All Need, from his album, Lunatic Confessions of an Anonymous Friend. We'd love to see this podcast help you move to more honest ownership of what you're experiencing so you can better understand how the truth will set you free.